So, the spoilers are out for My Hero Academia Manga Chapter 369, and this is going to be a doozy of a chapter, especially when we get to what the end of this chapter implies, because, ooh boy, I can't wait for next chapter. So, let's dive right into it, but first, right after this. Hey guys, how's it going? It is your boy, Manga Man Drew, and I'm here to cover the spoilers for My Hero Academia Manga Chapter 369, and this is going to be a very action-packed chapter from what we see with the spoilers so far, because we're potentially going to be seeing amazing fighting from Deku versus All For One, but like I said, the ending is going to be probably what I'm going to anticipate the most, and you'll see why that's the case. So let's dive right into the spoilers and see what's going on in this chapter. So the title of this chapter, from what we see from the spoilers, is going to be An Extended Life, and the chapter begins with a flashback of All For One choking the second user as he's bleeding. He says that his quirk was only capable of controlling small objects, and we see All For One crushing a bullet headed his way from behind without touching it. All For One says that he was an annoying insect with a quirk that was no more than a little hindrance, so he doesn't understand why Deku can use it in such a strong way and why he can see the second and Yoichi's ghosts behind the boy. So this is cool that we're going to be getting more or less a mini flashback to what we get with the first initial fight between the second user and All For One. And something that I saw with the panels is that we see that All For One is crying. I can dive into that more into the review, but that's something interesting to actually notice from the spoilers and to get a better context for why this may be the case. But all we know is that they fought in the distant past and that All For One obviously won against him, but probably at this point the quirk was already passed on, so maybe that's the reasoning why he's crying. But cutting back to the present with the next lines of text spoilers, the quirk is stronger because of One For All and can now control each cell individually. Used together with the raw strength of One For All gives rise to a power that is able to distort the foundations of the world. Next, Deku hits Tomura All For One with a quintuple Detroit smash. Deku is flying around the battlefield like a bullet, but Tomura All For One notices that his last blows were not as strong, probably because he has no more Fajin in stock. He prepares to intercept the next blow, but Deku shifts into first gear and slows down to avoid it. Danger Sense activates and Deku sees that Tomura All For One is going to hit him, so he uses Smoke Screen, jumps high with Float, and pulls Tomura All For One with Black Whip. He then prepares his next attack, charging with Fajin that he stored with the quadruple Detroit Smash, or quintuple Detroit Smash. So this is going to be very cool. We're going to be seeing Deku use all of his quirks in conjunction with one another, and something that I find interesting is how he's not using all of his quirks at once, but he's using them in concession or in like repeated motions, which shows that he may have better understanding of how to process the quirks, not necessarily using them all at once, but shifting in between them. So that's something that we may need to look into a little bit more, but it's cool that we're possibly seeing that now. And going a little bit more into the text spoilers, the second user says that what Tomura All For One should fear is not the quirks, but the will that dwells within them. Deku remembers Banjo's words that he would be the one to complete One For All, and yells that he will end it once and for all so that All For One won't hurt anyone else. The punch was so strong that it opened a hole in Tomura All For One's chest. Yoichi says that he can see his brothers inside, and that what the round-eyed young man, in reference to Mirio, said is true. This long fight is affecting the fusion between All For One and Shigaraki. The second user says that the real deal starts now, that he needs to remember Shimura's words, and that he cannot pass out yet. All For One begins an internal monologue saying that it's unfair because he has not yet been able to use any quirks to show how strong his new body is. Erasure, the Flying UA, the villains, being divided, everything acted against him. This is when All For One screams and 9 lights with similar to One For All ones appear next to him. Deku looks confused and Aizawa wonders if he still has some trick up his sleeve. So this gets even more interesting with the implication of like the stars, because that's kind of the representation of the inherited will of One For All users when it comes to the stockpiling of power, as well as transferring their wills to one person to another. So this is a very cool implication, and from what we see with the final part of the tech spoilers and the final part of the spoilers for this chapter, that maybe not necessarily the power itself in All For One, but possibly the representation of All For One passing on his will or passing on power to other individuals, as we'll see most likely in the final panel of this chapter. So, getting into the final tech spoilers, or the final lines of the tech spoilers for this chapter, All For One then finishes his internal monologue by agreeing with Yoichi, saying that if all the efforts accumulated through the year are going to define the results of this battle, then he still has a winning chance. Cut to Spinner, who's giant and drooling. End of chapter. So this is what I was talking about and why I'm so happy for what's going to be going on within the next chapter, because it shows that we are going to be focusing on Spinner, Lizard Boy, and potentially the fight that was going on with him. Now, we may not have seen the entire fight, but I feel as if we did not need to. As long as we get to focus more on the other fights in their entirety and get to see the final results of those fights, I think that I would be satisfied with it, and I think that is where Horikoshi is going with these fights. So, I think all in all, from what we're getting with the spoilers, this is just going to be once again another heavy action-packed chapter with a lot of cool action going in it, as well as some minor reveals about how the second user's quirk works. So that's something else that we're going to need to talk about. We need to talk a little bit more about One For All and what's going on inside of Deku, but also how it's once again being compared to All For One, and how we're getting similar symbolism with All For One that we had for One For All. That's something else that we need to talk about. And just the final parts of this chapter when it comes to Spinner. What does this mean? What are we going to be seeing in the next few chapters? Well, I'm probably going to talk a little bit more about that in the review, but this is all I have to do when it comes to the spoilers for My Hero Academia. So, what did you think? Do you think that this is going to be a very interesting chapter, or do you think that it's just going to be so-so? Leave your thoughts down in the comments down below, leave a like on the video if you like this type of content, and don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel for more content like this. Do all that cool jazz, and hopefully I'll be able to catch you in my next video. Goodbye!